But look, there are these different voices presenting competing visions of what veganism is supposed to be. Ethically, politically, morally, dietarily. I mean, culturally. There's a cultural struggle. Guys like Jeff Nelson and Durianrider have been, I think, self-consciously asserting their voices in that struggle in trying to form what the future of veganism is supposed to be. And there is a level on which I can respect both of them, even though 90% of this video you're about to see is very disrespectful. In case you haven't noticed, it ain't news, but Jeff Nelson, Vegsource, is a liar and a hypocrite. He's saying Eisel was really frantic to get me to make a video about a situation with Durianrider, and I didn't take the bait. So it's not true. Jeff, I never asked you to take a stand on that. Never. I still don't want you to. Because I think your content is garbage. Because I have no respect for you and I have no respect for your channel. So why would I ask you to? It's true that I made a broad, call to arms across the board. Everyone on YouTube, everyone on the internet, everyone who would hear me. Saying, look, if we don't draw a line in the sand against two things, violence and defamation, who's going to do it? If not us, then who? If not now, then when? And Jeff, now you are saying Durianrider was 100% right. I fully deserve what I got from Durianrider. It's you supporting Durianrider in 1, his use of threats of violence. 2, false criminal allegations. 3, serious defamation. So Jeff, this is at the same time that you have just made a 1-hour video claiming, nobody should be threatened with violence. Nobody should be defamed. Trolling by this definition has got to stop. And you are guilty of the same things. You are a goddamn hypocrite.
À-bas-le-ciel.
If you think I'm ashamed of what I've done in the last 6 months, you're wrong. And Jeff, I think you are ashamed of what your daughters have done in the last 6 months. And I know that I'm right. I think you're coming on the internet and defaming me and playing all these games as a 60-year-old man because deep down inside, when you watch a video like the Lick My Body Challenge, you feel ashamed. But there is actually a broader and more profound problem. If everybody in the movement is tearing each other down because they perceive you as being morally impure, because some jackass, hypocrite, lying asshole like Jeff Nelson made up the lie that you're a pervert, that he made defamatory allegations. This is the movement tearing itself apart over nothing in this context of muckraking, of defamation, etc. And you're destroying the vegan movement before it has a chance to even get off the ground.
À-bas-le-ciel.
It's not an exaggeration to say that there is a struggle going on to shape the future of veganism. I wouldn't say it's a struggle to control the movement as it exists now, because as it is now, there's barely any movement to control. But there is a struggle to inspire and form what the future of veganism is going to be. And some people are doing that in a self-conscious way with a sincere concern for veganism achieving its goals, politically or even nutritionally, or in some other sense. And some people, I think, are sleepwalking through it or in a state of denial about what it is they're struggling over, what it is they're doing here on YouTube or in their own activism, what have you. And beyond that, there are some people who are more or less cynically exploiting the movement at this nascent stage just to get money, just to get fame, maybe in some cases just for sex.
You asked me about the use of the term fake vegan. It's used to describe people like you, because you're a parasite on this movement. You're not making a positive contribution. You're doing your little bit to exploit and destroy the movement. You are a fake vegan, Cheetah. Yeah, that's right. And then you turned around and you embraced Durianrider and you claimed that my court case is fake when you know it's real, and you denounced me and defamed me. Cheetah, you claimed that you speculated that I had some kind of love affair with a 16-year-old when you know I didn't. You intentionally scraped the bottom of the barrel for every crummy lie and recycled bullshit that you knew Durianrider invented of thin air just to get attention. And yes, you were on drugs at the time. You were high on Anavar and I think testosterone, and you were trying to quit vaping.
What does that have to do with the fake vegan comment towards him?
I'll tell you, Because it explains you, Cheetah. It explains why you're a fake vegan.
Money, power, fame, sex. These are motivations that captivate leaders and followers alike. And I've got to say, even though I disagree with many of the other leading voices in veganism today, even though I may very openly revile their theories or their political claims, their political practices for being stupid. Let's give a quick example that you've seen on this channel if you've watched for a long time. Direct Action Everywhere had a protest where they ran onto the sports field at a baseball stadium. This is a digression from the top of this video, but it's why I use such harsh language. And they hold this up as a successful protest. They want others to be inspired by this and emulate it. It's making a very clear claim on what the future of veganism is supposed to be. And there's a level on which, because, they're not sleepwalking through it, they're self-consciously articulating this as a style of activism and a philosophy and a set of political principles. I can respect that they're making the claim, even at the same time that I disagree with it. From my perspective, that protest is a total joke. It just looks like a couple of fans ran to the field. They had a banner they were trying to unfurl that said something like "Go vegan, stop killing animals," whatever it said. They never even really unfurled it. They interrupt the game for a couple of seconds. Security pounces on them, hauls them off the field. I don't know if they spend the night in prison or what. They probably pay a big fine for interrupting a Major League Baseball game. But look, there are these different voices presenting competing visions of what veganism is supposed to be, ethically, politically, morally, dietarily. Culturally. There's a cultural struggle. And guys like Jeff Nelson and Durianrider have been, I think, self-consciously asserting their voices in that struggle in trying to form what the future of veganism is supposed to be. And there is a level on which I can respect both of them, even though 90% of this video you're about to see is very disrespectful towards the particular claims and ideas that they advanced in veganism today. I say this because while this video is in a sense just a drama video, this video is in a sense just responding to controversy that's happening right now. I try to make my videos in a way that I myself would find interesting if I came back and watched this 5 years from now or 10 years from now. In veganism, we do deal with the politics of the moment, the politics of the month, but also the politics of the millennium. In many ways, we're dealing with issues and struggles here that are going to continue not just for the decade, but for centuries. And because of their ethical weight, you could say the same thing on one level just about cigarette smoking. Nobody thinks that Western civilization is going to abolish the use of nicotine in the next 5 years. It's not going to happen. You can sit down, look in the mirror, and ask yourself, and go through some of the statistics, do you even imagine it would be possible for us to abolish the use of nicotine in the next 50 years? Is it going to be 100, 200, 500 years? But the reality is nobody quit smoking for the sake of the cigarettes. Nobody quit smoking to save the tobacco plants. There are so many reasons to quit smoking. I encourage you, if you still smoke, quit smoking. But it's very different from the type of ethical struggle we're involved with in veganism across the board. Because in veganism, we're not just doing it for health. It's not just about a plant-based diet. It is about ecology, animal rights, human suffering, animal suffering, needless violence, etc. It's about so many themes that we have to carry the weight of every day. And yeah, I find it impossible to imagine that this struggle is going to be over in 5 years or 50 years. I find it a lot easier to imagine that we'll still be asking these questions in 500 years, for better and for worse. With that having been said, in case you haven't noticed, it ain't news, but Jeff Nelson, Vegsource, is a liar and a hypocrite. Here's Jeff Nelson trying to be catty and calling me out. Jeff Nelson writes on his own Tumblr blog. Sorry, if you can see it, I actually have you can see the image on screen here, on the edge of your screen. That's the fabulous graphic detail of Jeff Nelson's Tumblr page. but I am going to read out to you Jeff's comment on me. If you want to search for it, you can find his Tumblr and you can search for Dr. Evil. Anonymous asks, "Hey Jeff, Dr. Evil is saying your daughters are ugly and discussing their physical appearance, period. Are you going to slam him the way you did the vegan couple?" The profound question for Jeff. Here's his reply. "Nah, this is just a desperate move by someone who has nothing to contribute to anyone or anything. He was really frantic to get me to make a video about his situation with Durianrider. That's a lie." I continue the quote. "And I didn't take that bait either. He fully deserved what he got from Harley, and more, in my opinion. His communication with me, and he's written me super long, weird emails a number of times, has been deranged and mentally ill, period. That's a lie. He fancies himself an intellectual, but I went to Yale and then Stanford, where there are a lot of actually intelligent people. You ain't one of them, Jeff. None of them talk or act like this unemployed loser, period." Okay, I wanted to read this without stopping before I comment. But look, Jeff, your daughters are not teenagers. Your daughters are 23 years old. 23. Fully grown adults. And, I really didn't want to watch it, but before making this video, I felt it would be irresponsible if I didn't watch it. An example of what your daughters do for money on YouTube is called the Lick My Body Challenge video. I would be deeply ashamed if my daughter made that video. I would be ashamed if my best friend made the video. I would be ashamed if my sister or my aunt. I would be ashamed of myself if I made that video. And at the same time, of course, it would be different if your daughters were otherwise making a positive contribution to veganism, or if they were making positive videos, interesting videos about chess or science or the history of Polynesia, anything. Okay? But they're not. Your daughters are producing garbage content.
Follow us on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. It's all at Nina and Randa. We are so weird. We're so dumb.
And I criticize that content, and I'm not the only one. And it's not a troll video. It's an intelligent video, and I can give the link here or whatever. I still recommend people see that video. There's nothing I regret in that video. And the same video, I'm criticizing heavy hitters in the vegan movement like Gary Francione and Gary Yourofsky. Long list of important names. And the video has a very clear point, a very clear message that has nothing to do with whether or not your daughters are good looking. I don't see how anyone, even given that you're their father, if you watch the Lick My Body Challenge, which is only one example of many of garbage content your daughters are producing at age 23, as fully grown adults, I don't see how anyone could watch the Lick My Body Challenge and then feel that your daughters, Nina and Randa, are above criticism. That nobody within veganism should dare criticize your daughters, given that they made, let's just keep with one example, the Lick My Body Challenge. In this case, if it was someone else who made a very, considerable, if Vegan Gains made that video, you'd see it in that context. You'd say, well, Vegan Gains made this one stupid video, but he also makes videos that are well-researched and scientific, or, I think that's how most people, Vegan Gains does make some stupid videos, but they see it in the context of him also making videos that are well-researched, that have something important to say, et cetera, right? So this is the basic point here. To say I'm unemployed, well, Jeff, I just did 540 hours in the classroom learning Chinese as a full-time student of the Chinese language. I did 540 hours in about 6 months. In class. Now, obviously, there's time studying and writing essays outside of class. I wouldn't call that unemployed. That's a lot more hours than a university student does in the classroom with the teacher face-to-face. Okay? If your daughters at age 23, they can do the exact same thing I did. I would encourage them to. Nina and Randa, I would like to formally say to you that, you know what, your father has called me an unemployed loser. But I think it would be good for your lives if you stopped trying to play the guitar, if you stopped appearing in commercials that promote the consumption of meat, dairy, and eggs for Taco Bell and other corporations, if you stopped whoring yourselves on YouTube in the most shameful and mind-numbingly stupid form of entertainment possible, in videos that I genuinely do think are worse than pornography. I have much more respect for actors who appear in real pornography than I have for Nina and Randa in producing their videos. I think your lives would improve if you bought an airplane ticket to Kunming, China, and you enrolled in exactly the same educational program I did. You can move into the same apartment and you studied Chinese for 540 hours. It is goddamn hard work. And Jeff, I do not know if you have ever in your life worked as hard as I did during those 6 months. It's very hard work. I went from level 0 in Chinese to now being able to speak and understand Chinese. Chinese is not the first language I've done that with, and it was very, very difficult for me because I just mentioned, immediately prior to that, I was speaking Thai every day. I was in Thailand, where I got into a charming legal situation with a man named Durianrider. We'll come back to that later. I was speaking the Thai language every day, brought back Thai and Laotian and those languages to my mind. And before that, I was studying Japanese. It's very, very hard to transition from Japanese to Chinese. So when I first started working on Chinese, I still had Japanese and Thai really going on in my mind. It's hard work. So Jeff, I appreciate that you're choosing to completely misrepresent my life, that I'm merely an unemployed loser. If you think I'm ashamed of what I've done in the last 6 months, you're wrong. And Jeff, I think you are ashamed of what your daughters have done in the last 6 months. And I know that I'm right. I think you're coming on the internet and defaming me and playing all these games as a 60-year-old man because deep down inside, when you watch a video like the Lick My Body Challenge, you feel ashamed. I think, Jeff, you would be proud if I was your son or if your son had done with his life any of the things I did. And you know what, Jeff? He can. Your son can go and do humanitarian work in Cambodia. Your son can get a job working in the publishing industry, doing editing of nonfiction books. Your son can study a whole bunch of languages and do humanitarian work and do original research and publish peer-reviewed articles. Your son can aspire to do all those things, and your daughters can also. Really, this is a gender-neutral thing. Okay? But your daughters are 23 years old, and what they're doing, it isn't just shameful, because a lot of people do shameful stuff on the internet. None of my business. It's also bad for the vegan movement, which is why it came up briefly in one of my videos long after you and I had our discussion about Harley. I continue. Sorry to digress, guys. So I resume. He was saying, none of them talk or act like this unemployed loser. Nearly all of my friends from college run big companies, have successful careers and normal relationships with other people, period. Oh yeah, Jeff, that's really funny you should say that, Jeff. I don't know, have you ever been involved in the humanitarian project that handed sacks of rice to starving people in a third world country? Have you ever done that, Jeff? Have you ever signed up for humanitarian work where you literally woke up in the morning, chopped logs of wood, boiled your own lentils over a fucking wood fire? You got to boil your drinking water too, and one of the things you do, we also did work for long-term improvement of their ability to farm food, their ability to feed themselves. There were other aspects of the party. It wasn't just sacks of rice. Have you done some of that, Jeff? Has your daughter done some of that? Has your son? I know you got money, Jeff. Nobody's disputing that. Okay? Nobody is debating whether or not Jeff Nelson has got money. What are you going to do with it? Okay? Given the level of wealth I was born into, my father had 9 kids. So in some ways I had advantages, and in some ways I had disadvantages. In many ways, the kind of poverty my family experienced was temporary because it wasn't linked to my parents' earnings. It was linked to the fact that my dad had so many kids. Like, if a bunch of the kids are going to college at the same time, it's a ton of money, right? But I did get to experience both. I'm just being honest with you. I got to experience what it was like when my parents felt they had so much money they didn't have to worry. And I got to experience what it was like when my parents said they had no money and they did have to worry. I got to see both, and that was my parents' perspective with their own finances, however accurate or inaccurate. But yeah, you know what? I come from Canada, and in Canada, some of our poorest and most oppressed people who live in terrible conditions, people who have to go out and boil their drinking water in a metal pail and carry it home in the freezing cold, are Cree people, Ojibwe people, Mohawk people. Okay, the Mohawks are doing relatively well. Okay, anyway, Cree people, Ojibwe people, Dene people, other indigenous peoples of Canada. Shout out to the Mohawks, I'm just saying. In terms of actually having drinking water, my impression is the Mohawks are doing better in terms of that kind of access to basic services. Okay, I enrolled at First Nations University, Canada. I enrolled in the study of Cree and Ojibwe languages. I started to get involved with humanitarian work and research projects related to those people. So Jeff, you are reproaching me because unlike nearly all of your friends run big companies. Really? Well, you know what, Jeff? Maybe one of the reasons why I don't run a big company is because I never wanted to. With a little bit of money and privilege I was born to in this world, I was interested in making a positive difference. And you can see that at every single stage of my life. Even though my means are limited, my family would not be considered rich or wealthy in Toronto, not at all. However, if I go to a reservation, if I go to a Cree or Ojibwe reservation in rural Saskatchewan, those people consider me wealthy, rightly or wrongly. When I was going to small towns in Cambodia, I was going to some remote villages in Laos, those people considered me wealthy. So, I actually, let's keep it all real. I can remember going around Scotland, and some of the people in Scotland thought I was wealthy. Scotland has poor people too. So I don't know, Jeff. You really think you're going to shame me by talking about my failure to run it? Jeff, there are so many levels on which this, even though the point is defamation, in which obviously your own insecurities about your own status as a leader in veganism are shining through here. So Jeff's character assassination continues. Dr. Evil is 40, spends his day on YouTube making long rants focused on young girls. Lie. And uses big words he doesn't understand. Okay, look. Jeff, point one why this is a lie. Your daughters are not young girls. They're 23 years old. They're women. I know what I was like at 23 years old. I was a monster. I was an intellectual monster at 23 years old. To say I was rough around the edges is an understatement. Okay? That's at that age, I had a lot of potential. But I also had a short fuse. I'm now a very reliable person in many, many ways. And at 23, Frank, I still had some demons. But I'm glad. I mean, in some ways, I'm glad I was not on YouTube at 23. 23, I was a fully grown man. Absolutely, I was. And people can join the army. Most countries can join the army at 16. Maybe you can join the army at 18. Your daughters are 23 years old. They're not girls. Okay. Secondly, if you think my very brief criticism of your daughters is overly castigating or harsh, take a look at my criticism of fully grown men. Take a look at my criticism of Gary Francione, Gary Yorovsky. Take a look at my criticism of some of the non-vegans on my channel. Let's see. Sam Harris. Sam Harris. I think I was much more cruel to Sam Harris than any other man, woman, or child talked about on my channel. So yeah, some people in the crowd, I'm live streaming as I record this. Some of you have fond memories of just how I laid into Sam Harris. Sure. Okay. Critique is part of politics. Critique is also part of the entertainment industry. If you've put your daughters into a position where they're going to earn their living by playing the guitar and singing and dancing, or going to audition as actresses, there's going to be a lot of criticism. And a lot of the criticism is going to be much more harsh than anything I said. I still stand by what I said, completely reasonable. But anyway, so let's just reread that sentence and the next sentence here from the much respected Jeff Nelson. Dr. Evil is 40, spends his day on YouTube, making long rants, focused on young girls, and uses big words he doesn't understand, period. You don't have to have an Ivy League education to understand what word best describes this guy, pervert, period. Okay, so Jeff, you just accused me of being a pervert. Now, all right, sorry, this is not over. I've got to continue reading this. It gets into some serious defamation. It's all serious defamation. Why am I mentioning this now? Jeff has just been lying, very hypocritically lying, and trying to present himself as morally superior to Durianrider, morally superior to Vegan Cheetah, morally superior to all the people who engage in trolling and muckraking and lying and insults on the internet. And he also had to, shall we say, moderate earlier statements he made in support of trolling, which is interesting because he talked about a fictional persona he used to have on the internet. I think it was something like Captain Beefeater, Captain Beefheart, I forget. And he clarified that while he approved of certain types of trolling, not other types of trolling, and he's made a really kind of long, involved, convoluted 1-hour video explaining to you why he is so morally superior to all the other people on the internet, whom he's apparently calling to account. And you're not, Jeff. Jeff, when the opportunity was there for you to stand up and be counted, when thousands of people, literally thousands of people, stood up to Durianrider and said, no more, you've crossed the line. Jeff, you were not one of the people who did that. Now, he's alluding to that history here very briefly. He says, he's saying, Eisel was really frantic to get me to make a video about a situation with Durianrider, and I didn't take the bait. This is not true. Jeff, I never asked you to take a stand on that. Never. I still don't want you to, because I think your content is garbage, because I have no respect for you, and I have no respect for your channel. So why would I ask you to? It's true that I made a broad call to arms across the board, everyone on YouTube, everyone on the internet, everyone who would hear me, saying, look, if we don't draw a line in the sand against two things, violence and defamation, who's going to do it? If not us, then who? If not now, then when? All right, there was a real crisis because I got threats of violence and serious defamation on the internet, and all kinds of people, including people who didn't know me, including some people who hated me, stood up and said, we've got to draw the line this far and no further. Shout out to Privileged Vegan. Privileged Vegan, I believe, hates my guts. I think she really dislikes me as a person. And partly due to misunderstanding, but partly, fair enough, it's her perspective of me. Privileged Vegan made a video supporting me, right? Saying, hey, Eisel is in the right here, Durianrider is in the wrong, we should stand up and do something. Shout out to her. All kinds of people I never heard of stood up, made a statement, whether they did it by email or on video. Jeff, you weren't one of them. Do I care? No. Was I mad? No. Months later, you made a bunch of insulting statements against me on the internet, insulting and defamatory and untrue statements about the internet, and you behaved as if, you made statements that made it seem as if we'd been in contact. You just said things like, oh, well, he never explained this to me. Like, what? Like, people read that and they assume we've been talking. Like, they assume like we had a conversation in which and it was not true. We'd never talked, no, we had never had any contact. I barely knew who you were. I recognized you from group photographs where you were with other vegans. But like, when people said the name Jeff Nelson back then, it didn't really ring bells. Jeff, oh, that guy? Okay. I'm not a fan, okay? I've never been one of your fans. And Jeff, now you are saying Durianrider was 100% right. I fully deserve what I got from Durianrider. So Jeff, this is at the same time that you have just made a 1-hour video claiming, nobody should be threatened with violence. Nobody should be defamed. Trolling by this definition has got to stop. And you are guilty of the same things. You are a goddamn hypocrite of the lowest possible order. All right? But at that time, to make a long story short, a lot of your fans, Jeff, were asking you to clarify why was it that you were still supporting Durianrider and you made a kind of halfway statement, say, well, you never really supported Durianrider. And now what I've just read is you 110% supporting Durianrider and supporting him in the worst excesses of his bad behavior. It's you supporting Durianrider in 1, his use of threats of violence, 2, false criminal allegations, 3, serious defamation. And of course, when it happens to you, you turn around and say, this has to stop. Now you're the one saying, Jeff, that somebody needs to draw the line. I have a background in political science. My first university degree is in political science. Someone who cares about politics watches politics. I believe politics matter. My approach to veganism is political. I think I do have some positive and helpful advice to offer my fellow vegans in handling a situation like this. What many of you may not suspect, when you look at this, you just see two people who hate each other, throwing insults at each other. What you may not see is how easy it is to turn a situation like this around and make something positive out of it, to make it an opportunity for something positive in the movement. When you have a conflict like this, one of the most useful techniques is to start by affirming what the other person says and then disagree with the content of what they're saying, not the particular words. Someone who was great at this technique was Bill Clinton. If you can remember Bill Clinton in his prime, in his heyday, somebody would say something so insulting to Bill Clinton. You ask a question that's really an accusation, saying that Bill Clinton is guilty of mass murder, is guilty of an arms deal that's morally equivalent to genocide. Say something really, really terrible to Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton would look them back straight in the eye, smiling, self-confident, relaxed. And Bill Clinton would say to them, you make an important point. You ask a really good question. I'm really glad you asked that. Now, let me tell you something. Another really important technique to have in politics, and I really felt Donald Trump was lacking this, is that when you're dealing with a negative situation being described, a confrontation, a conflict between two people, two countries, two parties, one of the easiest things you can do to turn it around is shift to discussing the future. So discuss a currently negative conflict in terms of the positive objectives, the positive prospects you have for the future. So if someone says to you, so let's say someone says to Bill Clinton or Barack Obama or somebody, any political leader, somebody might say to this political leader, well, look, your relationship with Russia is terrible. You have this problem, that problem, this conflict, that conflict. What are you going to do to deal with it? You can very easily turn that around by looking at them sincerely and saying, here's the positive situation I want to see 20 years from now. It doesn't sound hostile. It doesn't say, here's what I'm going to force the Russians to do. Here's my, what is it? Obama was always talking about a red line. Here's the red line. If they do this bad thing, then there's going to be war. Not in terms of negative definitions of this kind, not in terms of punitive actions, not in terms of threats. We say, you know what? It's a good question. Thank you for asking. You make a good point. Here's the positive relation. Then you can just switch to describing the positive relationship you want to have with Russia 20 years from now. Okay? Anybody with a background in politics, whether it's Jeff Nelson or anybody else in this situation, you could have used these techniques here. Why? Because what's the point? I mean, what are you actually wanting to accomplish? Where do you want to be? I don't know if he's going to be alive 20 years from now. What's the future of veganism 20 years from now? Is the future of veganism all of us fighting over this kind of nonsense? Is the future of veganism us fighting about whether or not vasectomies should be mandatory? Whether or not driving a car means that you're an immoral person? Whether or not it is possible to gain calories by eating too much fresh fruit? Sorry, whether or not it's possible to gain body fat by eating excessive fresh fruit, not calories. Yeah, you know what? I can respond negatively in the way somebody like Obama does all too often and talk about a red line, a hard limit, something negative. And you know what? I can also respond by saying, hey, you know what? I understand why you're making that point. I understand why you're upset, or I understand why you're asking that tough question. Here's where I want us to be 5 years from now. You know what? 5 years from now, it sure would be a better world if someone like Jeff Nelson and I were on the same team, right? Instead of being on opposite teams. And you can take it from there. And you can take that conversation in any direction you can imagine. This is not what Jeff Nelson does. What Jeff Nelson does, it is impolitic. It is politically inept. Okay? So let's just finish. Brilliant tour de force, character assassination, defamation from Jeff Nelson here. So he's just accused me of being a pervert, and I continue, quote, "It's a good thing he doesn't have access to young girls or even to his own daughter, given his weird behavior and sick obsessions. He's got the whole sick Trump mindset that it's okay to objectify females and talk about their bodies. I think it's good that his wife and daughter don't live near him, and I hope he never gets custody. And thank you, Harley, for speaking out against this guy from the beginning." Close quote. So that is pretty serious defamation from Jeff Nelson at exactly the time when Jeff Nelson is claiming he's so much morally superior to his critics, to the trolls, that he's morally superior to Harley, that he's morally superior to me, that he's morally superior to the people who deign to say, criticize his daughter's videos for their sexual explicit. And look, he says, my problem is my channel objectifies females and talks about their bodies. The only thing I would need to refute this is someone. Go to my channel, look at the list of videos, and scroll down it. And look, I want to say, I would actually never, disregard a YouTuber's whole output because they have some videos that do objectify females, talk about their bodies. The majority of YouTube channels have some videos that really are just objectifying women and talking about their bodies, whether it's in the heading of health, fitness, dating, romance. Nina and Randa have tons of videos that do that. But I mean, Vegan Gains, I remember ages ago, Vegan Gains did a video where he was just talking about who he finds hot and sexy within veganism. He mentioned other, females on YouTube who do yoga instruction videos. He said, oh yeah, he finds this woman attractive, that one. Some people would find that video offensive. Does that mean that Vegan Gains, that his intellectual output, when he makes a video where he's researched the hell out of how cancer risk is linked to eating eggs and drinking milk, does that mean all of his content is worthless? No. I would not dismiss him as a person or dismiss his whole channel or dismiss his significance for veganism for that reason. If you go to my channel, I have over 500 videos. I defy you to show me one that's guilty of this. But if so, I may have forgotten. When you've made over 500 videos, you forget. You know what? I can own it. Do you find one? Do you find five? Oh, okay. And you know what? If I look back on them and I think those videos are I can apologize. I apologize to freely. I'm really concerned about the future of veganism as a movement. We just had a situation in Canada where the Green Party, our ecological party, tore itself apart, imploded, because of accusations about who was pro-Zionist and who was anti-Zionist within the Green Party. Okay? Now, I've said that was silly for a bunch of reasons, because for one thing, the Green Party of Canada, they can't possibly have any influence on politics in Israel. So it's a counterproductive thing. Veganism in 2016. These are the last few days of 2016. Veganism in 2017. Tearing itself apart over who is and who isn't a misogynist this way. Who is and who isn't objectifying female bodies. Okay? As if Nina and Randa, the Lick My Body Challenge, is not objectifying female. As if there aren't a million health and fitness and yoga channels and bikini channels and beach vacation channels. There are so many channels within the vegan demi-monde that do this, and I ain't even going to complain about that. All right? If you think the reason to disregard my content is because of my attitude towards women and their bodies, my problem is not that you choose to stop watching my channel. It's fine. My content is not for everybody. My content is for a small but passionate audience. People who really want to save the world. Okay? People who, for the sake of ecology and the animals, who are really motivated to engage in long discussions about how can we get organized. All right? That's something you're not going to see on Jeff's channel or on Nina and Randa's channel. You're not going to see it on Durianrider's channel. How can we get organized to make a difference? It's not a question everybody wants to ask. It's not a question everybody wants to ask. That's fine. But there is actually a broader and more profound problem if everybody in the movement is tearing each other down because they perceive you as being morally impure. Because some jackass, hypocrite, lying asshole like Jeff Nelson made up the lie that you're a pervert, that you're a creep, and he insinuated that he made defamatory allegations. This is the movement tearing itself apart over nothing but your ego and your shitty insecurities, Jeff, and your pathetic attempt in your 60s to live like you're still a teenager. Your pathetic attempt when your daughters are 23, if you to pretend they're still teenagers. This is really worse than the Green Party tearing itself apart over Israel, over the Israel-Palestine conflict, right? The Green Party of Canada, I mean, at least that's an important issue. Okay, Jeff? This is the delusion of moral purity. And I guess the thought that everyone's got to be morally pure to have a voice that matters in veganism. I guess that's the delusion, huh, Jeff? In this context of muckraking, of defamation, etc., and you're destroying the vegan movement before it has a chance to even get off the ground. And you're not thinking about where the movement is going to be 5 years from now. You're not. I wonder if you're thinking about where your own kids are going to be 5 years from now, Jeff. Where do you think I'm going to be 5 years from now, Jeff? Think about it.
À-bas-le-ciel.
I hope I'm not going to be in court with Durianrider 5 years from now. But let me tell you something, guys. When I first did the fundraiser, people at first complained that I wasn't asking for enough money. I should have asked for more. And then later, there was this sort of second generation of complaints of people saying that I asked for too much money. So we've now had like almost 6 months of litigation for $6,500 US. I think we got one hell of a good deal out of my lawyer. I think we got a lot of legal services for $6,500 US. I don't think anyone can complain. Whether or not we win, what the outcomes are, I don't know. And you know what? I think my lawyer would agree with that statement. I think my lawyer is shocked that this case has gone on for so long. And I think he never imagined that we would still be here so many months later without having the first major hearing in court. He has spoken to several judges. He has, in that sense, had several court dates. But the first real hearing, the first major hearing, still hasn't happened yet. And that would be the time after which the police would officially want to arrest Durianrider, is after that first major hearing. There was an interesting milestone, though. One of the questions I put to my lawyer early on, I'll give a little bit of backstory here. You know, when I spoke to lawyers in Australia, and they said, look, you know, Durianrider's normal way to play the game is to pretend that he has no fixed address, to refuse to answer letters or court summons, is for Durianrider to try to be, to try to pretend that he's still homeless, basically, to avoid being easily pinned down by lawyers and police and by tax officials. This is what I was told. So they said, you know, it's very hard to get an answer out of him or what have you. So one of the questions I had for my lawyer, I said, look, let me know, when is the first time that we have paperwork back from Durianrider, you know, that proves that he's aware that this is a real case. Now, almost everyone who ever doubted it was a real case now already knows it's a real case. If they asked me or they asked to see legal documents, I've shared legal documents with various people, including the one professional journalist who covered the story to my knowledge. They emailed me and I gave them legal documents. So everyone who wanted to know knows that it's legit and it's real. But Durianrider has continued to pretend that either this isn't a real court proceeding or that to his knowledge it is not a real court proceeding. As of November 2016, we got paperwork back. We got paperwork back from Durianrider and or his lawyers. So he himself or his lawyers in his behalf or both, but I believe he was signed paperwork related to the case that was sent back to us. So it is a fact I think he knew many months before, but at the absolute latest in November of 2016, Durianrider absolutely knew that the court case was real and the legal proceedings against him were real and ongoing. Okay. Now we live in interesting times. I remember a few years ago, Obama was confronted by a journalist, questioned by a journalist about his use of drones to kill people overseas in targeted killings and assassinations by drones, by these small unmanned aircraft. Okay? And I remember, to me, it was very chilling. Obama's reply was the worst kind of lie, because he sat there and he said, whatever you heard about those drones, that has not been confirmed, or if it has been confirmed, it has not been confirmed by me. And he went on to make other statements of this kind, which basically meant, I'm not going to lie to you, but I'm also not going to tell you the truth. And it really struck me. I thought, wow, we are now living in an era where the concept of personal responsibility and personal accountability is so badly eroded that nobody is even going to look to this guy. Nobody is going to look to Obama and say, the buck stops here. Now, again, not even debating whether or not he should use Predator drones. I think there is actually, I think a better president could make a convincing argument that using Predator drones is better than carpet bombing. It's better than other forms of bombing. It's better than using the atomic bomb. It's better than destroying the whole city. I think there is an interesting debate to be had about whether or not, or what would be the ethical use of Predator drones. Maybe it is actually better than other military tactics that, for example, the United States used in Vietnam. It's better than using landmines and all kinds of things. There's an interesting debate to have there. But we can't even have that debate if you don't admit the decision you already made. If you don't come clean with that first step and say, yes, this is United States policy. Now let's talk about if it's good or bad. Now let's talk about the consequences. Now let's talk about strategy and tactics and outcomes. And let's talk about where we want to be 10 years from now. Because 10 years from now, we don't want to still be fighting the Iraq War, right? Durianrider, if you care about the vegan movement, you should have had the integrity, whether 3 months ago, 6 months ago, or 6 days ago, to come on YouTube and say that you were wrong. To say that, because before, I thought you were just joking. To my knowledge, you were just joking. But whether you were joking or trolling or not, you have maintained that you never heard from any lawyer or police or court authority, that you were unaware that this was real. And now I know for a fact. I know that you know that it's real. I think you've known for many months. Okay? Is it good or bad, or are you guilty or not guilty? Should you go to jail or not? I think those are still debates to be had. I think the significance of all these things, I think it really is debatable. And I've made other videos talking about that. All right? In a sense, we can't progress. We can't move forward. We can't even have those debates until you admit what you did wrong, what you've been lying about. And to refer back to what I said earlier, I mean, if you go back a few chapters in this story, it would have been so easy for someone in Durianrider's position to spin this into something really positive, using exactly the techniques that I mentioned. You could say, hey, you know what? That's a good question. That's a good point. Now let me tell you something. I'm going to respond to the substance, the real content of what you're saying, and not to just the words. You can come back to it and say, look, Like, it would have been the easiest thing in the world for Durianrider, especially before this escalated too far, for Durianrider to apologize for threatening with violence. He could have apologized for saying he was going to take me to the cops and put me in jail. He could have apologized for saying he was going to have me beaten in the streets. He could have apologized for calling me a pedophile and all these other... It's not the only allegation. He made up totally false allegations that I was kicked out of a vegan group in Quebec. I've never lived in Quebec. I was living in the West Coast. I was living thousands of miles away. A very, very long distance away from Quebec at the time. But I was kicked out of a vegan group in Quebec because of my sexual relations with so many women. Serious, terrible allegations. Durianrider, at any point, you could have come out and said, you know what? I'm sorry. That was wrong. Here's what I want to do in the next 5 years. Here's where I want us to all be 5 years from now. Because Durianrider, I don't know where you're going to be 5 years from now. But unless you kill me, you know I'm not going to disappear. You know I'm still going to be pursuing the form of ethical activism, the form of politically engaged veganism that you've been seeing me do on YouTube for all these years. All right? And maybe that's only going to matter to a few hundred people because I'm actually not out here pursuing fame. And that's the other point I want to come back to. Maybe it's good now. Maybe this can be the concluding point of the video. You know, it's a powerfully distorting thing that so many people, they're either sleepwalking into this debate over what is the future of veganism going to be, or that they're doing it in pursuit of fame. Someone like Vegan Cheetah, someone like Jeff Nelson, in my opinion, someone like Durianrider, money, fame, etc., notoriety. Okay? If someone were to ask me, am I so different? Am I not? Am I also pursuing fame? One of the reasons why my answer is no, you can find in a great video I did, I think a year ago now, maybe 7 months ago. I'll give the link below this video. There's a great video I did that has elitism in the title. And you know, although it's about elitism, partly, that video actually has a very positive and optimistic message. If only 100 people in Canada know who I am and know what I'm trying to accomplish in veganism, I could be completely happy with that. If they're the right 100 people. What do I mean by that? Look at any specific legal change, like the group of people who got together in your country to try to change the labeling on cigarettes so the cigarettes had a different warning. Do you think 5,000 people got organized to do that? It's quite possible in your country it was 100 people. It was quite possible it was less than 100 people. All right. And again, if you're talking about local level, provincial, city hall, local level, not federal level, not national level, 50 people, if they're the right people in a good organization, can make a tremendous difference. Okay. So I'm actually not pursuing fame. I'm pursuing real organization with other activists. As that video discusses, in a sense, is it elitist? Yes. Because if you ask me, well, who are the right people? My answer is not Durianrider. Okay? My answer is people who can get together, get organized, work hard, whether that's at City Hall or in the Board of Education, provincial parliament, federal parliament, you name it. But actually, that is a really deep sense in which I am different from Durianrider and Jeff Nelson. There are many, many other differences between us. Why did we start this in the first place? Core case with Durianrider, as I said from the start, nobody can guarantee you outcomes. The only thing we can guarantee is that you're doing the right thing for the right reasons. And that's why I invited you guys to donate. That's why I invited you guys to join this slow-moving, bureaucratic adventure with me, was to draw a line in the sand and say no more. I think it has already had an impact. I don't know when Durianrider found out it was real. I think several months ago, right after I made the video talking about his passport number, the Thai authorities did get in touch, did get his passport. I assume they got that from border control, blah, blah, blah. But I assume at that time, at the latest, he would have known it was real. So I don't know exactly when he found out it was real, but he has other legal proceedings against him that he knows are real. So I don't know if he was always just joking around or if he ever sincerely had doubt about that. Whether or not Durianrider was ever sincere in claiming to you that he doubted the reality of my case. He could have been trolling all along. He could have just been doing it as a joke and for fun of games. That was the impression I had. But if he at one time was deceived into thinking my legal proceedings against him were fake, doesn't really matter. I think we can really say that calling together vegans under this banner, Vegans Against Violence and Defamation, it has already drawn a line in the sand. Two of the people who got the message kind of late were Jeff Nelson and Durianrider. Today, Jeff Nelson is, hypocritically enough, dishonestly enough, Jeff Nelson is calling for a line in the sand against violence and defamation. He has his own problems with threats of violence and defamation. Well, Jeff, you're a little bit late to the party. You could have taken the right position. You could have taken a stand on point of principle a long time ago. You could have opposed Durianrider on this instead of approving of Durianrider. But nevertheless, you're welcome to join the party if you also now want to take a stand on point of principle and oppose violence and defamation. Why don't you start by apologizing for your own defamation, by making a very clear resolution that you will not sink to those kinds of defamatory tactics that we just saw. I just read out an example of you using that kind of defamation against me. Nevertheless, I can remember that for a period of, I think, more than 1 year on the internet, Durianrider was very self-confidently and callously describing himself as the world's most effective vegan activist. Durianrider claimed he committed to heavily the concept that he and Freely were the most effective vegan activists in the world, and for a time, that was taken seriously. Today, I think I can say to you with no irony, although there's no way to guarantee we'll win in court, all it takes is one judge to look at these charges and maybe even look at how long it's taken and dismiss them and say, look, I'm sorry, you have no standing. Say, look, I'm sorry, your case has no merit. That's it. That's the end of the case. Think about the meanings of the word in English. You plead your case. You go to a court of law, you plead, you ask the authorities to serve justice unto you. There are a lot of other problems in Thailand. Google Thai politics 2016. A lot of things are going on in Thailand. There are a lot of other things the establishment be concerned about. You go, you present the facts of the case. In my case, you also have to pay to have everything translated from English into Thai and have the translations legally proven to be valid. You make your case and you say to the authorities, please deliver me some justice. You plead for it. But believe me, it's totally possible that even without Durianrider proving his innocence, the court says, doesn't meet this standard, doesn't pass this test, we're not going to press charges, we're not going to pursue your case for you. Same thing with pleading your case before the Crown Prosecution Service in England. Nobody can guarantee you outcomes. What you can guarantee is that you're doing the right thing for the right reasons. And I can tell you one very real outcome is that I do not see Durianrider saying anymore that he is the most effective activist in the world. And if he did say that today, he might respond to this video tomorrow by making a new video on YouTube in which he doubles down on his claim that he, Durianrider, is still the most effective activist in the vegan world. I think he would be laughed at with scorn across the board. All right? So that is a real change. Jeff Nelson, I think he doesn't realize the extent to which he too is being laughed at with scorn across the board. All right? And as I was saying a few minutes ago, only when you can acknowledge the problem, only when you can confront the problem head on, then we can really start asking, okay, well, what is the most effective way for us to be engaged in vegan activism? Because that's a question I've asked again and again on this channel, and I've reflected on it from many different angles. I think for different people, there are going to be different answers, different solutions, et cetera, et cetera. But we do already have one very meaningful outcome from the case, which is that I think we've destroyed many of the core illusions of the Rato 4 cult. I think we've witnessed, in some ways, of course, it's just a coincidence, at the same time Durianrider's relationship with Freely fell apart, all kinds of dark personal secrets were exposed, there were all these other dramatic events surrounding it that were not the cause of my legal case with Durianrider, and they were not caused by my legal case with Durianrider. But nevertheless, the fact that thousands of people stood up and donated money to draw this line in the sand and say, here's the line, no further. It can be a positive turning point for veganism. And I think invisibly, thousands of people got the message. Jeff Nelson is not one of them. Vegan Cheetah is not one of them. Some of the most vocal and visible people in the movement have taken the exact opposite message. Some people have concluded that the way for them to become famous is to imitate Durianrider's worst excesses. Okay? But there is a silent majority of people who are watching this with their arms crossed, and they know that Durianrider's act is played out. I have no idea where veganism is going to be 5 years from now. There's really it's unpredictable. I couldn't have predicted any of this stuff. I couldn't have predicted vasectomies being the debate of the decade. I couldn't have predicted bicycles, all this crazy nonsense. To say it's unpredictable is an understatement, right? The permanent vacation paradigm, castration of dogs, Nina and Randa drinking honey or whatever. Taco Bell gate, one thing after another. Yeah, you know what? There's a sense in which I can say veganism is still really unpredictable, and I don't know what direction it's going in. But the one thing I do know is that it's not going backwards. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. We're not going to repeat the same mistakes of the past. And Durianrider, you were a mistake. A small number of people like Jeff Nelson failed to learn the lessons from that mistake. And I think we've all seen that in this video. But there's a much larger number of people who can learn that lesson and who can now make some kind of positive change and some kind of positive progress in veganism as a movement. And for those of us who think about veganism as a movement, that's also a way out of all this meaningless drama and chasing of fame or lifestyle activism, because I'm not trying to make a positive difference by reaching a huge number of people, by reaching a huge audience, by building up my status as an entertainer or a comedian or a bikini model or anything else. I know that for me to make a positive difference in the country where I have citizenship, where I have a passport, Canada, for me to make a difference in Canada, all I need, maybe 500 people, but they've got to be the right people. And that's why I commit this time. Thank you, Jeff Nelson, for calling me a loser, etc., etc. That's why I'm not doing the male equivalent of the Lick My Body challenge. I'm not doing salacious, meaningless videos like so many other people on YouTube, because for me, it's about meeting the right people with the right motivations and then sitting down and working out a methodology for how we can really make a positive change in our own countries of origin. If you're one of those people, hit me up.